Welcome everyone to Connected Learning TV. I'm Tara Brown. This is the 37th webinar in our series. So far, our webinar content has been viewed in over 100 countries, and we're super psyched to see such a diverse community develop over these past several months. To those watching on live stream, we encourage you to use the chat stream to introduce yourself, connect with others, share resources, and pose questions for those here in the Google Plus Hangout. That's really important. The URL for our public group notes, Google Doc for today, should be included in the live stream chat. We'd like your assistance in capturing highlights and sharing resources related to today's topic. With all the conversations and decisions surrounding education reform, what actions are being taken to include and amplify the student voice? We're honored to be joined by a great group of folks today. Before our guest speakers, Zak Malamed and Allison Wu, take the floor to help us frame today's conversation, I wanted to give everyone else here in the Hangout a chance to briefly introduce themselves. So let's start over here with Adil.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name's Adil Majid. I'm a sophomore at Carnegie Mellon, and I'm most excited to see how adults will recognize the student voice and what they'll do to keep note of it.
Thank you. Jordan?
Hi, my name is Jordan. I'm 20 years old, a sophomore at UCLA studying political science. I am most excited about empowering students to find their student voice in their schools.
Great, thank you. And Nikki.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki Kakarla. I'm a sophomore at Barnard College at Columbia University, and I'm most excited about student voice because I get to connect with all these like-minded students.
Thank you so much. Today's discussion is led by Allison Wu and Zak Malamed. Allison Wu is a member of the Policy Council of the National Youth Association. She is passionate about youth social entrepreneurship and advocates for youth voice in education reform. Zak is a dedicated advocate for the student voice in education policy. He is the organizer of the Twitter hashtag chat StuVoice and helps operate the website. Is it StuVoice or StuVoice? Both Zak and Allison are also blog for the Huffington Post. So Allison and Zak, take it away. And before you do, can you just, is it stuvoice.org? Is that how you say it?
StuVoice.org.
Okay, so sure. Okay, go ahead.
Allison, do you want to start?
In terms of introductions?
Yeah, tell our story.
Oh, sure. Okay. So I'm a freshman at Williams College in Massachusetts, and Zak and I actually met because we had both watched the documentary Race to Nowhere, which is a documentary about the state of education in some schools in the United States right now. And it had inspired both of us to look into how students could get involved in the education reform movement. So the director of the film had connected the two of us along with some other students in the United States who were interested in getting involved in getting the student voice out there on important issues such as homework, standardized testing, college admissions, and just overall stress in the school atmosphere. So we actually ended up meeting in August of 2011 in New York City, along with some of these other students. And from there, we discovered that we were both passionate about student voice overall, and since then we've just worked together along with a lot of other great students across not only the country but across the world to work on empowering students and elevating their voices.
Right, and I'm a freshman at the University of Maryland, College Park, and yeah, that experience with the documentary Race to Nowhere really made Allison and I recognize the importance and the value of the student voice, how the student voice can really shape the education dialogue. And so what we set out to do was find ways to ensure that students could have the same opportunities to not only influence policymaking within their schools, but also really speak out there at conferences, on the internet, really establish a digital presence. And this probably really the digital presence aspect of things really took off about March of last year, 2012. Not last year, this year, March 2000. It feels like so long because we've done so much together. But we were both at the Celebration of Teaching and Learning in New York City, and Allison took part on a panel hosted by Dell's Education Division. And we'd both been active in the Twitter sphere. in education dialogue, and there's something called edchat, which has been going on for some time, really bringing together educators, discussing education and the pros and cons of certain teaching practices. But what came to mind was that, okay, these educators are talking about education, but this education ultimately is all about the students. So why aren't students talking about education? And so we all came together for our first Twitter chat sometime in May of last year. And we had everyone from presidential candidates to journalists to educators, and of course, most importantly, students taking part in some really great dialogue. And that's been going on now for months, every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's great to see people come together and recognizing the fact that everyone has a life and everyone has a busy schedule, but everyone dedicating an hour a week to really talk about a very important issue. I like to say that the student voice is probably the most underrepresented, not probably, it is the most underrepresented population or voice in our country today. We don't have we don't have the right to vote, at least those of us who are below the age of 18. I voted in my first election this year, but I've always aspired to really have the ability to make a difference and make an impact, and recognize that some of my peers who wanted to have a voice, didn't really know how to find their voice. And that's what led to the formation of StuVoice.org. Originally, we thought, oh, just another blog, what's the point? But it turns out that students, really were excited by the idea of creating StuVoice.org. They wanted to share their stories, and that's how we started out, everyone sharing each other's stories. I had one student approach me who didn't end up pursuing uh, a degree, an undergraduate degree, and he chose to go join a startup. And he wrote and he shared his story on StuVoice.org. And the next day, this is probably one of the most exciting moments for me with StuVoice.org. But he approached me and he said, "My father has never been prouder of me than when he read my piece on StuVoice.org." And to see someone taking an uncommon route and really being able to exercise his voice and recognized for being successful in his own right was something that I really took pride in, and recognized that there are other students out there who who could benefit from seeing their peers exercising their voice and also feeling empowered to exercise their voice. And there have been plenty of students out there who haven't really been the typical student to be a student government, be involved in student government in high school or in college, and haven't really found ways to exercise their voice. But through StuVoice.org, they have been able to do that, and they've reached thousands of Twitter followers. Millions of people have seen their tweets, their blog posts, and it's a really inspiring movement at this point. And that is what's leading us now to take it a step further beyond the digital sphere and bring people together face to face through a student summit that we're planning for sometime between the spring and fall of next year. The summit plans to not only give students the opportunity to come together and share their stories and figure out ways to take action, but also and give them the tools to exercise their voice, but also put them in the position to be the champions of bridging the partisan gap in education policy today. It's such a partisan issue, unfortunately, and everyone claims to be putting students first, but who's putting students first if students don't have an equal say and an equal voice at the table? And so our goal is to put students in a position to be connected with policymakers and educators, influential people in the education sphere and beyond that, so that they can now feel as if people do care about what they have to say. People are interested in the student voice and recognize its value. I like to say that, with a fledgling education system, not including the student voice is like a detective conducting a criminal investigation without interviewing the victims. It's unprofessional, it's unjust, and I really think that by taking this next step to really implement the student voice as a perpetual part of education policy and beyond, we will be taking that next step to ensuring that all students receive a fair and equitable education. And I know Allison and I share that same passion. So Allison, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add on that end.
Nothing except to say that I'm so excited for what's to come in the future, and we can't wait to work with more students.
And we have some of those students here today who we've all connected with over Twitter. I know Adil and I met for, what was it, like 15 minutes in Central Park this summer. Jordan and I have never met. Nikki and I are meeting for the first time tomorrow, yet it's like we're best friends, and I talk to them probably more than I speak to some of my friends from home. And it's really become such a great movement of connecting like-minded people, and that's what's so exciting, the fact that social media really is more than just tweeting about what you had for lunch or how you hate your teacher or whatever it is, all those silly things in life. But it really has the ability to bring together like-minded people who share similar ideas and are really passionate about, taking those ideas and turning them into action. And that's what we have here.
So you all met over Twitter? Well, except for Allison and Zach?
No, Adil and I met in Washington, D.C. this summer.
Many of us have met over Twitter, and some of us have met over email, and it's, for the most part, we were connected some way or another via some connection over social media, meeting someone over social media. And there are plenty of other students who could speak to that today.
And for those others in the Hangout, have you all blogged on StuVoice? Do you want to talk about something that you posted on there?
I posted about 3 or so weeks ago. We had a pretty heated discussion about a month ago about standardized testing, high stakes testing. It was a really good conversation. It was a very good conversation, but it also shows that the polarization that exists with adults also does exist with students. And it's a gap that we have to bridge at all levels. And it kind of poses a new challenge. So what I talked about was that it's very important to empower the student voice, and it's good that we're all speaking up. But it's a two-way street. You can talk all you want, but if everyone's talking and they're trying to shout over each other, then no one's going to be listening to anyone. And empowering voice is the first part of the process. We need to make sure that people are listening to it. And that was basically what I talked about, that students should be leading by example. Because if we're upset with the current system, the status quo, where Republicans and Democrats shout over each other and they sign oaths that are aside from the oath of office, they have all these pledges and they can't bridge the gap, then we're going to get nowhere. And if students can't do that, well, students are the next generation of leaders in this country. And if we're not able to bridge our divisions now, then that won't change in the future, and we'll have the same problems we have right now, the same stalemates, the same stagnant process, all of these things, and that's really what's crippling the system as well. And unless we can solve those with the students, unless students can reach out, be like, look, not only can we speak up, but I can talk to someone who disagrees with me, who's on the complete, opposite side of the ideological spectrum, and I can have a good conversation with them. We can discuss not only our views, but also potential solutions, areas where we can overlap, where he can cede some of his points and I'll cede some of mine, because compromise is the basis of how we run things in the United States. That's why we have a two-party system. We're supposed to bridge the gap. We're also supposed to give a little bit and meet in the middle. And if students can do that, then that really sends a message.
So Adil, if you don't mind me posing a question to you, do you think this is about changing a culture or something more than that, or different, something different?
I think it's tough to categorize what we try to do. This has a lot of goals. It has a lot. One, we want to empower and elevate the student voice. We want to set a precedent for future leaders and current leaders. We want to send a message to current leaders. We have a lot of goals. So whether or not it's a culture change or just a policy change, I think it's all of those things.
So I'm curious, you said that it was controversial. What were some of the opposing comments, and what were there also educators involved in that conversation in addition to students?
Zach, you want to take this one? Or does anybody else want to take this one?
I think it's all at you, Adil.
Oh yeah, sounds good. So what initially ended up happening was, as far as high stakes testing goes, some people believe that, right now, I think everyone can agree, or most people can agree, that the current system is crippled. But how we want to fix the current system is where people disagree. Some people want to scrap high stakes testing entirely. It's like, it's unfair that one day should decide a large chunk of your future. And the disparities between if you have very high income or you're low income, how can you prepare for those tests? There's a number of reasons why it's bad. Now, on the flip side is, well, it's also an extremely objective system. Everyone takes the same test, so you're on the same metric. And those are two very different ideas. One, if you can't have a group that says, let's scrap it, another group that says, let's keep it and fix it, and then try to find a middle ground. Unless you say we should keep it and we should bring in other factors that the second group wants to decide. it's very difficult to find that gap. And when we're confined to 140 characters on Twitter, it's even more difficult to do that. So what ended up happening was it initially started pretty civil, and then there was some comments that were thrown around that weren't very relevant to the topic, and it made a much more heated discussion by the end, where I think mostly because of our limitations to 140 characters, we're really just saying what we thought over and over again, as opposed to
let's be clear. I think this pretty much paints the picture of what the education policy conversation is like today. It's not like this is just a Twitter chat and this is just what the Twitter chat's like. This is what the entire education policy dialogue is like today. And educators were involved in that. And actually, you probably would find the educators being the most controversial people in those chats, more so than most of the students. Of course, we do have our fair share of controversial students and very opinionated students, and that's great. It's great to see them speaking out, but I think what we need to do with Student Voice and what we're working to do is make sure that all students recognize the value of working together, respecting each other's opinions, and finding a way to reach that middle ground. Because you look at Washington today, and it seems like there is no other way to create a solution other than just standing by your own principles and not considering a way of compromise. That's just it's an unfortunate reality. And I speak to some students who say, if I compromise, that's as good as just like not getting anything done at all. And it's unfortunate that that's the way things are seen, but I think it also shows that Student Voice is empowering people to speak out, and they recognize the power of their voice. It's just how we use that voice. It's something that we're all really trying to learn together.
I think the problems that the students have and the educators have are one and the same. At least some of the problems. That being, they kind of take a seat at the table. They're like, look, here's how I feel. And just as Zach said, they're unwilling to budge. And I think that's a product of the rhetoric in today's politics, where if anyone budges, everyone else jumps on them for being weak. And that's something where we have to be like, look, changing your mind isn't necessarily a bad thing. If it does lead to a more productive conversation or can bring us a solution, then it's something that we really should be looking into and really should be doing.
So I think Allison, Jordan, okay, sorry.
I was going to say, I think Adil said it best earlier when he said that students are the leaders of the next generation. So it's really important for us to start learning about these things now and coming into our own as leaders, learning about compromise and principles. And the Student Voice movement is a great example of a way to do this.
I think the controversial chats are really important. It's the reason why I like StuVoice, because that's when we can see, okay, standardized testing. We have different views on standardized testing. That's something that we need to focus a lot on. And when you have the different dialogues, that's when we can see like, okay, well, we have diverse experiences, so our opinions are going to be different. So let's talk about that more. And I think that's one of the reasons why the problems stay. That's why the problems stay problematic, and the issues leave on as issues, is because we don't have this dialogue about it, and we think that everyone thinks like us. And that's why I like joining the chats, to see what everyone else thinks, and to see and to just know that my opinion isn't the only opinion, and it's not the right opinion sometimes.
And I think what you'll find, of all the Twitter chats that there are out there, I think StuVoice may be the one where you really do see both sides of the spectrum come into play. Most of the other Twitter chats tend to be more one-sided, where everyone's just kind of preaching to the choir. So I think StuVoice is, and this is something I actually just realized right now. I haven't thought of this before, but if you really do look at the other Twitter chats there are out there, there is no Twitter chat that you'll find, or few Twitter chats that you'll find, that really do show both sides of the spectrum.
So I'm wondering, does anybody just pose a question on the Twitter chat, or do you usually seed it, Zach, or any of the rest of you? How does that work?
It's been evolving since the beginning. Originally, we would bring on guests and try to tailor the conversation, the dialogue to the guests. Then we decided to start choosing our own topics. Then we decided to start having polls. So we've been trying to shake things up to see, what do people want to discuss. Then just yesterday, we had an interview with a StuVoice education research expert who's been doing this research on the Student Voice for decades now. And that was one of the greater Twitter chats we've had in a while. So we're trying to spice things up. Twitter chats, like Adil said before, 140 characters can be kind of limiting, and therefore can make some Twitter chats a little bland. But for someone that, I guess, if someone hasn't joined before, there's always something new there. And for people who've been participating every week, we also want to, keep things interesting and create new conversations. So we will have webinars every so often. We will interview people here and there, and we try to make the Monday night conversation always interesting and something new. We're actually going to have a webinar the first Monday of December with some Canadian student voicers who, and in Canada, they're very, very receptive to the student voice, and there's much more acceptance of the student voice in Canada in comparison to America. So we're going to learn from them, and things keep evolving, keep changing, but we always try to keep it interesting.
Just curious, Zach. What is it that they do in Canada, which is very much different from what we do here?
In Canada, I guess this could be a little bit of a preview for what is to come. But there are many more student advisory councils, more student boards. Students are much more accepted. The idea of student voice isn't something that's very new in Canada. It's more well established. Whereas in America, I think it's something that's just taking a life of its own. So in Canada, it's been around for some time, and there's some very well established student voicers in Canada who you will hear from in the beginning of December.
So I'm wondering, have any of your instructors, teachers ever participated in the chats with some of these topics? Nikki, Jordan, Allison, anyone?
I don't think that my instructors use social media to the extent that they would join this. I mean, I've never seen any of them on these chats. That said, that a lot of the instructors that I've met just by working in education reform have really embraced these chats and used them as an opportunity to learn about the student perspective on everything from teaching methods in the classroom to overarching school, state, national education policy. And I think that's just been great.
And have you relayed that you're doing this work with any of your instructors?
I have.
Yeah, Zach has.
I have one teacher who happened to join some of the Twitter chats. He's very big into creative writing and so he wrote a book on it, and he's trying to get it out there. His thoughts, his practices out there. They're very innovative. And I said to one of my former teachers in high school, you got to get on Twitter. And so he joined Twitter. He joined some of our Twitter chats in over the summer, and then he went to the National Council of English Teachers or something along those lines this past weekend. And now he's obsessed with Twitter because he realizes how it really connects like-minded people, and he's participating in the English chats, English teacher chats on Twitter. So it's cool to see that happening, and I think we'll probably see more of our educators joining Twitter in the near future. But I don't think we see many of them. I mean, I think that might be one of the. Oh, actually, Nikki has one.
Yeah, actually, I had the opposite story. My teacher introduced me to Twitter and all of these people. Shelley Krause, some of you may know her. I'm not sure if she participates in the Twitter chats, but she is like all over Twitter. She was the one that introduced me to the whole education movement and all the conferences, and so I think that's one of the main reasons why it's so important that teachers do reach out, because they're better at identifying the students that would be perfect to work on this work.
So what do you guys? Go ahead. Sorry.
I think that's a good step for. I think that's a good step for the next move with StuVoice. What if we all had to invite our educators? I just actually sent a lot of the StuVoice website. Was talking to my old high school educators about it. But what if we had to bring our educators to the chats on Monday? That would be really, really cool.
A new idea. I like this one.
What about sending your blog posts on StuVoice to them, or to your parents, or to your friends? I mean, do you guys share them around a lot?
We do. When students post them, they do tend to share. When we look at the analytics of things, there are some students who tend to share their pieces a little bit more than others. But I think there are a lot of parents who've been reading the blog posts. We saw back over the summer there was some teacher course online that actually had StuVoice.org as their assignment. They were supposed to go to our website, read our blog posts, and comment on them and the value of student voice. And that was really, really awesome to see how how teachers took an interest in what students were saying, and StuVoice.org was their homework assignment. But I think Jordan brought up a good point. It would be great to bring our own educators onto Twitter, onto the Twitter chats, send our blog posts over to them a bit more. And that may be a good assignment for all of us to take on moving forward.
I love it. It's good. So question for you. What steps should we take to change a culture that currently lacks student voice and student input? So you just came up with, I think, a great example, which is, low-hanging fruit. Hey, let's send it to our instructors. What are some of the other things that you think we could do? Nikki, do you have some ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I just said one of the main things I think is important is getting teachers to not only realize the value in our voices, but also encourage their students to speak up about education. Also, I think the points we just made also show how important that we have all the stakeholders present. Just students alone won't be able to do this. We need the parents, we need the educators, we need the administrators, we need the policymakers. Everybody needs to come together so that, we start talking about education, not just students, but in terms of like the entire country.
Anyone else want to tackle that one?
I think everything Nikki said is definitely true, and they're great points. And I think it's also just really important to look at it in terms of recognizing students as the next generation. And our generation is going to inherit so many of the issues of today. And to be equipped to handle these issues and deal with them, we're going to need to have a very strong education system. And how best to create the education system then to talk to the people who use it.
Yeah, I agree. I like to say that, I think all educators, not all educators, it's a generalization, but overall, it's expected that if the students want to be heard, they're going to go to the policymakers, they're going to go to the educators. And as Adil said before, it's a two-way street. I think we need to see more parents, educators, policymakers approaching students, establishing student advisory councils, student boards, whatever it may be. Just in the classroom setting, looking for student feedback. It's not like students are being critical. I think we need to be more accepting of each other's opinions, views, because that's what a classroom experience is like. That's what a family is like. That's what a community is like. And if we understand each other's views and each other's concerns, I think that only makes for a better classroom experience, a better family experience, and a better community experience. So that's something that we'd like to see happen, and hopefully StuVoice will inspire some of that, or is already inspiring some of that.
And do you mentor or give guidelines to students who want to make a difference, want to have their voice heard, how they can start?
I guess I'll answer that. What we really have here is a support network. We have Facebook groups like the Student Union, YCAN, Student Voice also has its Facebook group where kids come together, and when students do have concerns or want to know what they should do next, there are always students commenting and responding to those posts saying, I've had experience doing this, I've had experience doing that, I can help you, I can guide you. We really, I'd like to say, we're really just a support network of people. One size doesn't really fit all. What works for a student in inner city Manhattan may not necessarily work for a student in Des Moines, Iowa, and we recognize that. So if a student is coming from a similar situation as another, then we'll pair them up and they'll work together. That's what's been happening so far. But as we continue to grow, I think we are going to develop a more systematic way of pairing students up, because it's very important that there are more mentors out there. I think we're all mentoring each other at the same time because we all have different experiences.
And what is the age? I mean, is it high school, college, elementary school? Is that in there?
Everyone, students, a student, a student, a student, a student.
And so do you have elementary students that are a part of this movement?
I've been speaking to a few administrators and educators about getting elementary school students to draw pictures that we can post on the website to, for them to explain, this is what I like about school, this isn't what I like about school, this is what I do to improve school. And I think for them, the most articulate way of expressing their voice is through drawings and other kind of artistic forms rather than writing at this point. And so that's something we're looking into. We do have middle school students, but reaching that elementary school population is probably, it is a great next step, and it's something that we've been working on.
That's great. So it looks like we have a question from the live stream. Should adults or educators, or what questions should educators ask of students at the school or classroom level? Let's see, who haven't we heard from? Jordan? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that can be simple. A lot of times educators forget about the student voice. What do you want to learn? What are you interested in? I think a lot of times I've been the most interested in lecture halls, whether in college classes or at the high school level. I've been interested in lessons about what I like to do, whether it be linking my history into the English assignment, the English book that we're reading, or talking about my family life in discussions and linking that to what we're learning in the classroom. I think when they can relate to students, that's when students are more interested, and relate to artists, relate to environmentalists in the class. Just finding out what we're interested in and trying to make your lecture relatable.
I agree with everything Jordan said. Those are all really good ideas. I think one thing that we need to keep in mind as well, along with all of that, is that we shouldn't skip any steps. Because oftentimes the students who don't speak up, the ones who we're trying to encourage to speak up, it isn't that they aren't being asked questions, it's that they just don't know how to respond, or they don't feel comfortable responding. So the first cut to the chase, like, hey, what do you like or dislike? It should just be simpler things. Like, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but just in general, getting to speak up about everyday things. Like, how was that assignment? Did you like reading that book? Whatever it is that they're doing. So the student is comfortable giving positive and negative feedback to an instructor or to an administrator. This way, if they say, if you suddenly jump to the heart of the issue, which is like, hey, what do you dislike about your school? Then a student who has never spoken up before may not be so comfortable giving negative feedback. And that's the kind of feedback, well, not negative feedback, or constructive criticism, whatever it is we need to fix. And I think if we skip that first step, then we might be shutting out a lot of voices who simply aren't comfortable speaking up but might have great ideas to share.
And so I'm wondering also, with the blog that you have, that's one way that the students can give feedback and then pass that along.
That's definitely true, but again, I think it ties back to the idea of if a student has great ideas, but they have all these mediums to channel them out, like people know Twitter exists, people can know about our website, but if they just don't think people will listen anyway, then they won't write that, or they won't say that, or they won't post that. So I think we first need to bridge that gap, and that's a very difficult thing to do. It's not a clear-cut solution. It's not a cut-and-paste solution that we can do to every single person the same way. It takes a lot of one-on-one time, but I think these are things that if educators are genuinely interested, or if those of us in this chat, we're obviously very genuinely interested. So when we talk to these people, we should recognize the ones who already comfortable with their voice and just give them the medium to do it, and then find those who are not comfortable with their voice, make them comfortable with their voice, and then show them this medium. Be like, look, now you're ready to speak up. Now you're able to do this, or now you're comfortable doing this. Here are so many ways for you to do it.
And have any of you found success with that? With being able to speaking with your instructor and giving feedback? Sorry, Jordan, did I cut you off?
When I was in high school, our principal used to ask us, when people used to come and visit and tour our school, she used to ask us, what did we like about the school? What didn't we like? And that was the first time an administrator, someone in that position, had ever asked me about school. And I had a whole lot of things to complain about, but I didn't know how to articulate them at that moment. And it was the first time I'm like, whoa, you care? You care what I think about the school? And I had to go back and critically think about those questions. And it made me, okay, well, this is what I don't like about this school. And I had a list for her the next time she asked. So I think really starting that dialogue and asking those questions, then I know that you care about my opinion. And then I'll be able to look back and pay attention when I'm in a classroom and be able to say, okay, I like the style of this learning. I don't like the style of this learning, and this is why.
That makes a lot of sense. Have any other of you had a success where you've given feedback and then actually seen change?
In a classroom setting or anything in general?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about, educators, instructors right now, so in the classroom.
Well, in the classroom, it's hard to say. I find that most educators will implement that change the following year if they implement change at all. It's hard to adjust at that time, or it's hard for us to really recognize that adjustment. Um,
So they're not very agile. They're listening, but it might not benefit you.
I mean, I'm just speaking from my own experience. I'm sure there are teachers out there who have, but I think there could be more of that. It's just difficult. Um, but outside of the classroom, in terms of policy making, I definitely see a lot of people receptive um, to the student voice and have made changes within the same school year or within the same week or whatever it is. They definitely are more receptive outside of the classroom than inside.
Oh, that's interesting. So I think one of the questions.
I'm sorry. I think it really depends on when you ask those questions. And it's important to not wait till the end of the year to pull out the evaluation questions and say, what did you like about this course? What didn't you like about this course? And it's like, okay, well, we could have talked about this 3 months before. So it's important to always maybe like ask questions each month, each chapter, each unit, to make sure that you are having that dialogue so that you can change your ways throughout the school year and not just at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, related to that, from the live stream, they asked if any of you have had the opportunity to craft a curriculum from the ground up with a teacher. I mean, it might not be implemented in the same, year, but maybe for subsequent years. Any of you?
I never had the chance to work with a teacher, but I will be leading a college, like, student-run course next fall. And we're putting together the curriculum. It was a pretty good chance to see like what I like as well. It was something that was very subconscious. I started putting this thing together, and then I realized this is how I would like all my classes to be. So even though I've never had a chance to do this with a teacher, I think it's very valuable. I don't know if anybody else has, but I think it's a very valuable insight to learning about how you think as well.
Yeah, I've actually I've done a curriculum for my own, and it was an independent study in high school I got to do, and so I crafted my own curriculum and had like a teacher approve it, which is not necessarily the same thing, but it does teach you like not only how hard it is to do that, to plan out a whole year, so like giving credit to teachers, but also figuring out what is going to make the most impact on your life, and like how is this class going to change you. And I think that students seeing long-term goals is really important, and crafting a curriculum kind of shows you that.
I took a service learning class in my 10th grade year of high school, and it was like a mandated service learning class. And it was an environmental class, and it was mandated for everyone at the school. And one of the things, so we would read different units about, for instance, renewable energy. And at the end of that unit, everyone had to craft a curriculum. And we would have a community event where we would have to invite friends, parents, teachers from other like grade levels, and everyone had to craft a curriculum. And that was probably one of the best experiences that I've ever had, because you saw, just like Nikki said, you saw how hard it was to create a curriculum, but you also had to think about objectives. You had to think, how am I going to engage my peers? How am I going to engage the educators as well? And it really, you become the best teacher when you teach yourself. And that was a really good lesson to learn. And I think more teachers should have students create curriculum, because you become the best learner, and you learn the most from creating the curriculum.
And maybe empathize a little bit with their workload and putting a curriculum together.
Definitely.
Okay, and I think related to that, in some of the things we've been talking about is that, there are principals, instructors, teachers that, ask you, hey, what do you think of this or that? But, maybe you are feeling listened to, but are you being truly heard? Are things being implemented? Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good question.
Well, it actually came from a Twitter chat, it's StuVoice Twitter chat. It said that, or there was a statement that students are being listened to, but not truly heard. And why do you think that this is?
I guess we have one experience, one great experience. I should say we have many experiences, but we have one really, I guess, one experience in particular with the New York Education Reform Commission, which is our grassroots effort, where within a week we wrote a letter to Governor Cuomo. No, let me backtrack. Uh, Governor Cuomo in April of this year established a Education Reform Commission, but didn't include any students on the commission. And in January, in his State of the State address, he said he wanted to be the lobbyist for the students. So we found that to be kind of contradictory. And so we wrote a letter to Governor Cuomo asking that he add students to the commission, or at least incorporate the student voice in some way. And within a week, we got a response saying, one, that students would receive priority to testify at every meeting. Two, that students, if they so desire, could meet with or speak with the members of the commission. And three, if we're not satisfied with the preliminary and final report submitted by the commission, then the students themselves could submit their own report to the governor. The thing is, I think that we should really not only have that opportunity, but we should become a part of the process. We should become a part of the decision-making process. And I think there should be more action than just giving us priority to do things. I think it should not necessarily be mandated, but it should be just common. It just should be something that is just expected, that the students are a part of every conversation. And I would have liked for more action on the governor's part. I hope to see more action taken by the commission. But I think that's one example where we were heard, but we didn't necessarily have a say. And so that's something that we'd like to see change and build upon what we were able to do in New York on a nationwide scale.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to add, like, I think there's that saying of it's great to be in the room, it's better to have a seat at the table. And I think unless we get there, you know, students won't affect the decision.
Philadelphia, the mayor of Philadelphia implemented a StuVoice on at all his tables. He created the Philly Youth Commission, and it's headed up by, like, the executive director just graduated, Jameer Burley. She just graduated from college last year, so she's like 24, 25, and there's all youth on the commission. And what they do, they have a seat at the table. He's established a program where they have a seat at the table whenever he's making any decision, which is amazing. And it should be a model for every other city in the country.
Yeah, I know that in my home state of Massachusetts, the Boston Public Schools, the mayor has a council of students who have done some amazing work in the past few years to really bring student voice to the forefront of everything, working with teachers' unions, policymakers, just the community overall, and it's just been fantastic to see that happen.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. It's good. Well, I like hearing that things are being done. That's good news. So you guys briefly touched before on, you know, you have an exciting year ahead of you. You're going to have, you said a conference, a summit or something, right? So what is the future of the student voice movement, and do youth and adults have different or similar roles to play? So if you wanted to talk about, you know, what do you see with the summit and some of the work that you're doing, and individually what you guys want to focus on also for this upcoming year?
Adil, I'm particularly interested in your response.
Okay, I'm really excited about the summit, and we have other stuff coming up before the summit as well that I'm also really excited about. I think the overarching theme for student voice, more than just, you know, empowering students and all of these things, those are tangible things we're trying to do. But the idea is connecting students, right? Connecting them to teachers, to policymakers, to educators, to other students, to adults. It's all about connecting people. And so I'll speak to one of our ideas that's coming up before the summit, then I'll talk about the summit as well. We're starting organization registration month in December, where the goal is to organize and like connect student-led organizations from around the country. And the idea is that, look, you know, a lot of these students do join these things, and some students want to join but don't know what's good for them. So again, it can connect students to an outlet for their voice, connect them with students who have the same goals, you know, whether it's like education policy or a completely different kind of organization, something related to policy making. As for the summit itself, I think what will be amazing about that, and Zach can touch on this as well, is that our goal is to make sure that 1/3 of the attendees are adults. And having, you know, 2/3 students, 1/3 adults is a good chance for them to talk to each other, to listen to each other. And the summit itself will be a lot about, you know, how do you speak up? What are good ways to speak up? What is it that you want to say? And then exercises in working together with people who disagree with you. We'll be giving them a toolkit and what they can do immediately after they leave the summit. So they have action items as soon as they get out. So the idea is that, look, the summit's kind of like the tipping point for students who have been on the fence about their voice. And as soon as they leave, it's where they hit the ground running and they go. So I'm very excited to see these things and connect students with the tools they need and the people they need to make sure that they are heard and that they are speaking up and that they are comfortable doing so.
So, and who does all the work to put the toolkit together and make all that part happen? Is it all of you?
So it's students. I mean, Zak's done an amazing job managing a lot of, and getting to know a lot of people. And we have committees together for each of these things. We have a committee for the toolkit.
Teams.
Committee agenda. There's a group of people working together on these things. Group of students. We've received a lot of help from Dell Education, and it's like everyone always says, it's a support network, and everyone's always there for each other. We're always in constant communication, and the people I'm working with the PR group, and the people I'm working with are people who I've never met, but they're extremely dedicated. They're very hardworking. They have great ideas, very diverse backgrounds, and we're all different threads that we're coming together. And I'd say, Zak, you can speak a little bit more about this, but we probably have over a dozen, maybe even more people working to get this conference together from all over the country.
Yeah, I would actually say we probably have somewhere around, I don't know, 20 or so students really dedicated to putting this together. And we're always welcoming more students and adult professionals on board to help support these efforts. It's Adil was saying how he hasn't met some of the people on his team before, but I think we're all getting to the point where even though we haven't met some of these people through weekly conference calls, it almost feels as if we know them and we're really good friends with them. Something I wanted to address before and I didn't address is the fact that we are completely nonpartisan and we respect everyone's views, but even more importantly is the fact that we're so diverse. We have people with all different socioeconomic, geographic backgrounds, and I think that's what really makes student voice something that's special and really bringing together all these people with different perspectives is something that's going to help make the summit great, help make our efforts and our movement even greater, and it's really exciting to see so many different people coming together to do something and do all of these great things.
And so how do you recruit students to be on a team and participate, and how would someone be able to join if they're interested?
I guess I'll answer that too, just because I've been trying to work on this for some time, and social media has been our biggest supporter in bringing together students, or our biggest asset, I should say, in bringing together students. But in putting together the summit, we're recognizing the fact that social media and the internet can only take us so far. I see, actually, this will tie into our next question if we have time for that pretty well. The fact that not all students have, access to social media, access to the internet, and that lack of equity it makes it difficult for us to connect with a certain group of students, and that's where money and resources will have to come into play. We have connected with some people who lack internet access, or don't have a social media presence, but it's not easy. And sometimes those people are the ones who can really make the biggest difference, are the most passionate about being heard, and I think it's important that we continue our efforts to reach those people, and that's why I think the summit's going to be so important and eventually a great success.
And are all of you a part in one of the teams working on the conference? You guys want to talk about, Nikki and Jordan, Allison, what your roles are?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'm on a team for the agenda and for attendance. So basically, we talk every week, multiple times, basically trying to propose different sessions we can have and how we wanted to make up the conference. What amount of students we wanted, adults we wanted, and basically we've just been having these conversations because it is a lot to flush out.
I'm on the outreach team, and what we're doing, we're reaching out to different nonprofits, colleges, high schools, already established student groups that will not be able to go to New York and attend the summit. because we'll be live streaming the summit, but it's to make sure that people that aren't able to be there can still engage in the same discussions that we're having. So we're creating discussion questions for them to work on while we're in our breakout sessions at the summit. So just a way to include all students and make sure that the summit is an authentic student voice summit.
And I'm working on the agenda team with Nikki and Zach, and also on the toolkit team, which Adil mentioned earlier. And that's really exciting, the fact that unlike many conferences, I think Zach can attest to this, where you go to the conference and there's a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, a lot of passion about an issue and how to change things, and then you leave and things aren't always done. The toolkit is going to help us make sure that people leave with the tools to create change. And when they do need help, they'll be able to fall back on the supportive network that Zach has described us as. And it's really exciting to know that our efforts will continue up to, during, and beyond the summit.
That sounds really exciting. And where did you say the summit's going to be?
The plan is to have it in New York.
That's great. Wow, that's so in the spring or summer?
Yeah, we're targeting the spring, but of course, just being realistic and perfectly blunt, it all comes down to sponsorships. We're getting very close, keeping my fingers crossed. But having great sponsorships and great support from some really great organizations and foundations is really going to make this, make our efforts as successful as they can be, and make things a little bit easier. Just in terms of putting things together. And so we're getting very close, very excited, keeping our fingers crossed for the spring. If we have to put in a little bit more time, then the fall is just as great, and we're really excited to make things happen.
Great, thanks. So it looks like we have to move into wrap up, because we want to give everyone a chance to sort of have some final words. So a good question that'll help sort of wrap things up, is what excites you about the future of the student voice movement, and what positive changes do you hope will take place? And Adil, let's start with you.
I mean, I'll touch on what I said in the beginning again. I'm most looking forward to seeing how adults will receive this, how educators will receive this, and what they will do to get involved. We've received a lot of support so far, but again, the goal is to take everything one step further. And I think the positive change I would like to see is, maybe even have an educator write for us once, or have them talk more about us and engage more in our conversations, which they already do, but increase their presence. And as we touched on earlier about the difference between listening to students and hearing them, it's good to listen and know what we have to do, but also to take tangible, actions that we can see. And you see these educators listening to us and actually changing things based on what students have said.
And let's skip over to Jordan.
Thanks for having me this morning. It's still morning for me in LA, so thanks for having me this morning, first of all. But I'm most excited about empowering students that don't realize that they have that important student voice inside of them. And I think a lot of times educators, they don't realize that they should be including the student voice. So I think bridging both of those gaps and bringing in educators and students and having them work together in the future, that's what I'm most excited about. And I can't wait to get work and to do the work on the summit and be there in the summit and meet all of you guys in person, finally. But yeah, I'm excited about just empowering students.
I don't know how you guys find time for classwork and doing all this work, so kudos to you. Nikki.
Yeah, I guess, thank you for having me. I'm really excited for bringing together everybody at the summit, all the stakeholders, and really getting people to start talking about the student education and the students. And, maybe in the future, I think something I hope for is, a question about education in 2016 in a debate, or just people talking about education more. And I think that's what my goal for this, and I'm assuming everybody else here is, for people to start talking about education more.
Great. And I wanted to let Allison and Zach kind of give their final wrap-up thoughts too. So you have a few minutes if you'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Sure. Zach, do you want to go first?
No, you can go first, Allison.
Okay. I think that everything everyone said is very exciting, and it excites me too. Something that I'm really looking forward to is the fact that I can see that we're making progress, and I know we're going to continue to make progress. And right now our voices are being heard by some people, but sometimes it's viewed as listening to student voices as outsiders, when really we're probably like the most insiders within the education system. I mean, we are the students. And I'm really looking forward to us getting a seat at the table as that change happens across the nation at like a more fundamental level, and making sure that it's something that lasts for generations to come. That will be really exciting to me.
Yeah, I agree. It really feels like we're onto something really great. Whether it's because of StuVoice or really all students, just coming together. There are so many great efforts out there, and we hope to, be part of that effort to really bring them all together. Because, I think we're in the process of seeing a cultural shift. Around the Vietnam War, we saw the voting age lowered to 18, and I think that was a real part of a cultural shift. And I think you're seeing something similar growing right now, where young people are feeling more empowered than ever before because of the internet, because of social media, and because of the ability to connect with people with like-minded, who are like-minded. And so I think you'll see, and I'm excited to see students have more of a role and see that cultural shift take place, where it becomes common, where the students are always a part of every conversation in education and beyond that, because it is our future, and I think we should have a role in shaping that future rather than having our future shaped by others. And so that's what I'm really excited to be working with all of these great students, are my great friends on, and I'm excited to make more great friends along the way.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill and Allison and Jordan and Nikki and Zach, for this great conversation today. It was really enlightening. I'm from Canada, and so I was like, yay, I'm glad Canada has good student voice happening there. So to keep today's conversation going, we encourage you to continue using the Twitter hashtag #ConnectedLearning and StuVoice, and posting in the comments section of this webinar's page in the archive section of connectedlearning.tv. On that same web page later today, we'll have a full recording of this webinar and other curated content. The next Connected Learning webinar will be on Thursday, November 29th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, or is it Pacific Daylight Time? 1 p.m. Eastern Time, as we speak with Arlie and Sangeeta from USC's Civic Paths project about how disenfranchised youth are using digital media to create and grow social movements. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.